There we are. There you go. Special edition of Cellar Confidential. Mira Boucher, Carl's Wine Club members, Canadian wine lovers, all of you guys across the country. This is exciting. I'm thrilled to be here tonight. We have a special guest. I have been joined here with Xavier, live from Toronto, a friend of the show, a friend of Carl's Wine Club, a nice partner to taste wine with. I had the chance to do a little bit of touring with Xavier last summer here in the Okanagan. We stayed in touch. I really like what he does. I like his palate. And I like our wine conversation every time. It's awesome. So Xavier, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
Good. It's humid as usual here in Toronto, but that's southwestern Ontario or southern Ontario weather, but it's one day at a time. All we can.
You know what? I can feel your pain, my friend. We are here in Kelowna, but the thing is, it's hot, it's smoky, but it's dry. So for a lot of people, it's just increased our problem because the forest fire down in the Soyuz are pretty bad. We have one in Sarman Arm, in the Sicamous region, also in Okanagan Falls, but we are not stuck with the humid weather. I know I'm talking with people in Vancouver, I'm talking with people in Montreal, you guys in Toronto, pretty much everyone is stuck with the same problem. Big, sticky humidity. We don't have it here. We're not part of that problem. So I feel sorry for you, my friend. We've been having such a crazy warm summer here. We haven't seen a drop of rain in now over 5 weeks. So it's been pretty crazy. Our wine grower, our grape growers are thrilled with what's happening in the vineyard, though. So what are you hearing from the Niagara wine grower or grape grower?
It's tough just because up until this trip when I went out to actually help out with the All Canadian Wine Championships, that was my first time to a winery here in Ontario since late 2019. So it'd been a while. What I am hearing is that so far so good. Will it be as good as 2020? I mean, the vintage, that is, not the year. But I'm hearing that positive things. So overall, it's positive. So we'll see. All you can do is wait and see. It's wine making, wine tasting, completely different skill set. I leave the wine making to the pros. That's a whole other ball game.
Yeah, I've been hearing some good thing as well for the start of the 2021, but this 2020 in your area will be pretty hard to beat. But like you mentioned, we never know. It can be like a clap of a finger. We know some natural event can happen and turn one vintage upside down pretty quickly. So here, I want to tell everyone, what are we doing here? We are sitting here on a Tuesday night. It was the All Canadian Wine Championship a couple weeks ago. I think it was held in Prince Edward County this year. And we've been in contact together, and I wanted to bring to our members, to bring to Canadian wine lovers, people who are curious about how it's happening, how they do it, how like what's the process behind all of that. And I know we're talking about 1,300 wines, 250 wineries, a lot. It's a long process. It's a lot of medals. But for me, what I get out of that, it's been since 1981. So it's been 30 years that group of people award or highlight the hard work and the great work of Canadian wine producer. And to me, this is such a great thing. Some people will complain, oh, this is rigged, this is that, but there's always people who's going to crap on good thing. So I don't pay attention to that ever again. I'm just so glad and so proud that we are highlighting the hard work and the passionate work of Canadian wine producer, because what we are doing now, I believe that we're producing world-class wine in many, many different categories. At the same time that the All Canadian Wine Championship were happening, there was also the decanter the World Decanter Wine Award were releasing some of their result as well, and we've seen like Hidden Bench from the Niagara region, from Beamsville Bench, who won one of the best in show as well. So we're seeing on the international stage some of our producer absolutely crushing it and showing the world that yes, when we have a seat at the table, we deliver and we bring some medal home. So it's interesting to see what we do here at the national level. So Xavier, what is your role with the All Canadian Wine Championship?
So I am the marketing liaison and the sommelier for the public portion, which I'll get into after. But just a bit about my wine background. I'm a certified sommelier with the Court of Master Sommeliers, so I've done the second level designation, and I also have the WSET level 3 advanced with wine and spirits, back when they used to do it in spirits a while ago. But yeah, so my role is predominantly promoting it online. So taking the pictures, putting it online, like on the Instagram, looking after the Facebook, when possible, getting out to wineries, talking to the wineries across the country, getting some feedback from them. What do they like, not like? It's not, nothing is perfect, suggestions, things like that. But in terms of the public portion, which is great for, unfortunately, it's maybe not unfortunately, but it's for when it's the public portion is when all the wines from the competition are available to be tasted. And that's traditionally held in June, also in Prince Edward County. So it's a great way for people, mainly in Toronto, but there's also some people from Ottawa and Montreal, like Western Quebec, that go in. And yeah, you can try any wine, really, that's available. It's really hard to try wines from coast to coast in one spot. And the best thing is that it's all of the proceeds go for charity for the local Rotary Club.
Oh, that's interesting. So for the Rotary Club in Prince Edward County.
In Prince Edward County, yeah.
That's so and obviously it's a big setup.
Oh, it is.
It's required a lot of logistic. You guys probably have been now I'm talking, it's all question mark because I don't know a whole lot about the whole thing, but you guys probably have a big team, a lot of judge. It's required a lot of people. It's a big wheel, now existing for over 30 years. So
40,
40, yeah,
81.
Yeah, 40 years. That's right. And yeah, my math are pretty off.
That's okay.
So tell me, the organization on its own, how many people do you think it's part of, from the judge all the way to the organization? It's probably like hundreds of people involved in there.
No, it'd be nice if it was, but no, it's probably a core of about 10 people.
Wow.
The thing is, it's tough because of COVID the last couple of years. So last year I was actually supposed to go and help out as well, but because of COVID, they had to have it with an even smaller group. How it was able to run last year is beyond me, but they were able to do it. This year there was maybe about 8 people or so, 6 to 8 people, to helping out with the tasting portion, bringing out wines, and just leaving it for the judges, collecting the empty glasses, things like that. It's like the little things that you don't think about, and then somebody tabulating the scores and all that stuff. Like there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. Like this year, it actually had to be done under a tent, which is one of the pictures on the main website. It's on there under a tent. In the past, I believe it was done at the Cape, is my understanding, but it was done in the place there. But this year it was under a tent. Looked like it was a wedding tent. But there it goes. There's the judging for the wines.
How many judges are involved in that in putting the result together?
This year it looked like it was about 3 per table. So one group might be doing Sauvignon Blanc, another might be doing ciders because there is a cider component.
Yeah.
Another group doing Riesling, and it's always changing. So it looked like it was about a dozen like a dozen to
A dozen
maybe
judges.
12 to 16 roughly. Yeah.
No, okay, so a dozen to 16 judges, and let's talk numbers here. So I
Mhm.
think there was something like 1,350 entries, something like that,
Yeah,
ballpark.
1,365
Okay,
from maybe pretty much every province except for
Alberta. I was looking at it as like
Alberta. Alberta
like,
is on there.
Alberta.
Alberta is on there. I think no, PEI is Newfoundland's not on there, so I'm just looking at the list here. Yeah, and Newfoundland is probably in Manitoba. I think might have been the only two provinces that didn't get in there. There was an entry, not for wine, mind you. I think it was a fruit wine actually, or a cider from the Yukon.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that was really really interesting. When I saw it, I was like, wow, what Yukon? Like that's really cool though. It's really cool.
So we're seeing 1,300 and something entries for wine and ciders combined from 250 producer ballpark.
217 this year.
217.
Yeah, it's done over 3 days
Okay.
because it's impossible to do it over over one, of course. But
Yeah, over 3 days, and we're talking about what, 50 categories or something like that, or
that sounds about right because some categories, like I know, some have like under a price point and then over a certain price point. So let's say under 30, over 30. But I do know some also have like under 20, 20 to 30, and then 30 plus. So it really depends on the varietal. Rosé, for example, has different styles as well.
Yeah, I was scrolling down and you can see like Riesling, there's off dry and dry Riesling. There's the Chardonnay, the unoak, and the regular Chard. While we're looking at the sparkling, you got the Charmat method, you got the traditional method. So you got different. So every wine is entered into his own category. And now what I would like to talk about is a little bit more about the judging. So how's the whole thing happening? So everything is blind, I guess.
Yeah, so the wines are covered up, and they're going out in a case in the specific order. I mean, the judges don't know what it is, and it's just here's a dozen wines of whatever. They do it, they tabulate it, they do their score, and then after the winner of that is essentially the winner, so to speak. So like the best in class would be the double gold. There's only one double gold. Then there's the gold and the silver and then the bronze. So the way this competition works is that it's not like anything above 80 points is automatically a gold. So the rough way is that it's generally like 90 to 100 is generally like a gold, or double gold, of course. And then the top 10 percentile, I should say.
Okay.
Gold. Then the next 10 percentile is a silver, and then the next 10 is bronze. So that's essentially how it works. So it's not like automatically like, okay, these 5 have 80, I'll get a score of 85, therefore they're all gold. So it's not like that. So that's why you see in some categories, you might see 3-4 winners in a specific category, like 3 golds of let's say Sauvignon, three silvers and a Sauvignon Blanc, 2 golds. Whereas another one, there might only be one. It just, for whatever reason, or those wines didn't make the cut for one reason or another.
So for me, as a wine critic or as a wine writer, I always rate the wines. I have my own methodology. I know what I always look for. My 88 is my benchmark. 90 is always like, I'll do a little bit of this price point, and I have my own methodology. When we look at that kind of contest, that kind of competition, I suppose that the judge have very specific parameter to meet, and because everyone should look for the same thing, right?
Yeah. So based off, like, they do have a 100-point scale that they use themselves, like, internally, but it'll measure things like, like you said, is this, like typicity, bouquet, aroma, flavor profile, and so forth, and that all combines up, makes up 100 points roughly, and then based off of that, they'll discuss it if need be. Sometimes it's clear cut, yes, this is a gold, no, this is not. and then they kind of go from there, and then off to the next category. It's hard work. Like it's. I mean, like like you can relate. When you're tasting dozens of wines in one day, your palate just goes. It's hard. It's a lot of people think, oh, wine tasting, you're just drinking wine. No, not at all. Not even remotely close.
We have Mira here is joining us. Mira, how do you like the start of that conversation so far?
I love it. It's so interesting to know a little bit of what it's like behind the scenes of 1,365 wines. I can just imagine. I wish we had a picture from you of what the room looks like with that many wines open.
That I cannot show, unfortunately.
No?
No.
I'm sure it must be hilarious and very, very interesting how you organize it all behind the scenes.
Yeah, like it's doing the teardown is, oh my gosh, a lot of work. It's just so much work after.
And remind me again, where is it held and how many people attend? So
it was held at the Cape in Prince Edward County. I think that's I can't remember what the Cape stands for, but it's it's like an old mansion. It's used for like special events.
Cool.
Now. So this year the numbers were lower. So I'd say maybe in total 20, 25 people, but because of COVID, I was only there the last day.
Yeah.
Just, to try to minimize exposures and whatnot.
And how many wines does each person taste?
That depends. Yeah, like, I mean, I would think, it's 1,300 entries or over 1,300. You're probably tasting a couple of hundred wines, like a day.
Over a couple days. Yeah. Wow. So that's pretty remarkable.
It's right up my alley, Mira Boucher. No, honestly, like that's what I was telling Mira. That's the next step in my career. I really want to start doing some judging, and I just can picture myself sitting there and like going through like that rapid fire and like boom, boom, boom. It is, it's so thrilling for me. Like I can feel the rush of adrenaline in my blood just talking about it.
So when Carl goes on wine trips, like he used to go back when he would do only international wines, right? He went to Napa once and I'm like, oh, what'd you do today? He's like, oh, we visited, 8 wineries. I tasted 230 wines. And that's one of the great benefits that Carl, like one of the great advantages Carl has is he spits all the time. He has
you have to. You're not standing if you don't.
Yeah. But a lot of the people you went with weren't, right? So even after a few hours of that, you're not sure what wine is what anymore. But Carl,
that's true.
Carl can still articulate it. So it's pretty special that way. Hey, I'm just wondering, I've heard, Xavier, like often in competitions like this, because of the fatigue you get on your palate after a while, what often can happen is the more bold, strong flavored wines come out higher. Have you noticed that, or is that something that you guys watch for?
You mean like higher scores?
Yes, because what I've heard is after a while your palate gets fatigued, and then you tend to sort of not be able to sense some of the subtleties in some of the wines, and so what I've heard is often award-winning wines are a little more like pronounced in their flavors.
I mean, I've never heard of that myself. But I mean, I would, based on what I saw, the wines weren't like, it wasn't like you're going from, let's say, a heavy, rich, Meritage red blend to a Pinot Noir right off the bat, or sorry, next, and then let's say a buttery Chardonnay, like that is taken into account. I mean, plus the judges do take breaks in between. Like it's not just slave labor or volunteering. It's volunteers as well. That's the thing. The judges are volunteers.
Oh, that's interesting, and that was my next point to you for you guys. Also, the order is something critical in all that, because when you start the tasting, like you just mentioned, you don't start with the Meritage and go all the way after it, go back to the Riesling to go to Syrah. Like the order of tasting, it's something critical.
Exactly.
You have to take into account the palate of each and every single judges. So in order of preserving the integrity of each and every palate, make sure that that the judge tastes properly. The order
Mhm.
has to be very well taught prior to the competition. And obviously now after 40 years, you guys have that nailed down, and it's interesting. So if I can project a little bit, you guys start with probably usually some sparkling. The sparkling wine goes out first.
That might be the case. That's in Bev's hands. The big cheese, the guru. She's the one who handles that all that. But I would think, yeah, something like like a sparkling or a light red, things like that, as opposed to starting off with an ice wine and then going off to a Syrah. It's not really gonna. I mean, they both could be great wines, just not really in that order.
Is it a restart every day, or you do like the first day you do all of the sparkling wine, the second day you do all of the white, and the third day you do all of the red, or is it a mix and every day you will do different categories?
Yeah, it's more of a mix. I mean, I don't know if they'll do all this, for example, say they all the sparkling and all the dessert a specific day, or if they kind of mix it up, because there are different categories even within the dessert wine. So like we have your ice wine, you also have your late harvest. There are fortifieds as well.
Yeah,
Then your dessert fruit wines as well. So like your ice ciders from Quebec, that are amazing value. Wish we saw more here in Ontario, but that's unfortunately not. So
there are different politics side that we can talk today if you
Well-
want, but it might be a slippery slope here.
yeah,
We're gonna be there very soon with what we do now. I think we're getting ready for a national conversation. There's many different let's say wine activists that we've been in contact with, as much as in BC, then Ontario, and everywhere in the country now. They're ready to spoke up, and there's some MLAs as well. And we were planning with some different people maybe to do a live show with some politician very soon to start to really spark that conversation, because I think like we have that conversation together before, and I think we are all ready to have that conversation on a national stage. But let's get back to our conversation tonight. So the order of tasting is something fairly important. So
Yes.
how many? Like we're talking about like maybe 50 different categories. So how many medals were awarded? Do you have that number?
Not the total, but just to give you an idea, we can go through the double golds. So the double golds, 29 went to BC. And 22 were for Ontario. So for BC had 759 entries, and Ontario had 465. So BC, just to put it bluntly, shows up. I mean, I've had that discussion with wineries here in Ontario, of like, how come BC wins most of the awards? Well, because BC shows up and Ontario doesn't. It's just plain simple math.
It was part of my. I was coming after you about that for that question, because I was looking at the number, and it's been held in Eastern Canada, in Ontario more specifically. Historically, right? Because it's been always on the east side. So why BC wines always show up almost on the double? And I've been looking numbers year in and year out. More recently, I don't have numbers from the 80s or 90s. I've never looked that far back. But why does BC show up more than Ontario? Do you have any idea, or
maybe a couple of guesses? Probably nothing I should say publicly. But there's a couple of guesses of life happens. I mean, I think this past year, one reason has been that the Ontario wine industry here, I think especially over the past year, was hit really hard with the pandemic. Whereas BC, when we were there, like when we had met, a lot of and I'm sure you heard the same thing. You go to most wineries in BC, and say they have 10 wines, half of those are sold out. Oh, we have a great this, but we're sold out. Oh, if you would have been here last week, you could have tried this, but we're sold out. oh, we're sold out of this. You hear that consistently. So, I mean, I think the pandemic this past year had played a big part in it. As for, before that, your guess is as good as mine. But the one thing I will say is I do have some colleagues who have helped out with the Wine Line Awards. And I've asked them, like, just general things of like, hey, is it more or less the same thing as BC enters more than Ontario? And they say, yeah. So it's not just in All Canadian Wine Championship thing. It seems like it also applies to other wine awards as well. Why?
Huh.
I mean, if you have the answer to that, that'd be great. Like then, you can start to communicate on that. But
yeah, because if you look at the Chardonnay du Monde or decanter, like at Chardonnay du Monde, often you hear wineries from Ontario who comes out like some of the big winner of that. Like, I don't know why, like when we're talking about national competition, BC showed up way more than Ontario. And in terms of production, I would say that Ontario produced more wine than BC in terms of quantity. So it's always interesting to see like the synergy in between the two regions. And I agree with you that talking with Ontario wine producers just right now at the outset of the pandemic, that Ontario has been hit harder than BC. So it's very interesting. Oh.
Hey, I'm getting an echo. I came to think of that. Are you hearing that?
No, I can hear you fine.
Oh,
I mean, I would also think that because traditionally we do have more entries from Nova Scotia as well.
Okay.
So I would think that maybe there's similar reasons as Ontario, and being the pandemic, which is why this year there weren't as many as there have been traditionally.
That's interesting.
But again, I'm just taking a guess. When I was doing wine tastings this year, talk about the pandemic and how things are didn't really come up in conversation. But I mean, there were a lot of wineries, in Prince Edward County and Niagara, and I presume also Lake Erie North Shore as well. Are just happy that they're able to have people back in and doing tastings. Whereas BC, like you go into a Save On Foods, and it's all BC wines.
Yep. No, definitely. Like if there is one market where I would say that they're extremely protectionist, and I know because I live across the border in Alberta for more than 15 years, and you see how BC people always buy BC. The buy local movement is so strong in BC. And I know that it drives people from Alberta absolutely off the wall. Oh man, people get crazy about that. But now that I'm here and you look at like how much they support their wine business, it's something very special. And if we would have, like if Canadian in general, and I speak about like people in Quebec and people in Toronto, we would support the Canadian wine producer as much as BC people are, we will be talking about more sold out wineries on a yearly basis. That's for sure. Because Quebec people and also a lot in Toronto and Ontario are drinking lots of international wine compared to the consumption of Canadian wine. So that's definitely a fact for sure. Hey, let's talk about money here.
Okay.
I don't know if you're allowed to talk about it, but how much does an entry cost to register a wine for the championship? Because obviously it costs money to run the whole thing. You need to pay for the whole experience. So I'm suspecting there's the fee per wine to enter the competition.
Yeah, there is. Unfortunately, I don't have, that off the top of my head. I mean, I can certainly get back to you on that. Really, like if I said, right, any number I'd say right now is just a guess. but I don't think it's anything, insane, like $1,000 for entry or anything ridiculous like that.
I would say, but maybe like something like $100 per wine, or maybe even less if.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I know there's a fee.
There is a fee, yeah.
Yeah.
There is a fee, and that's another thing too. Like, I mean, yes, okay, it's not free, but at the same, and just going back to why some wineries enter versus not. Let's say it's $100 for argument's sake to enter 5 wines. You're shipping. Okay, let's give it another $100. Let's say it's $600 in total. $600 for to get marketing and advertising on a national level. That's a pretty good deal.
It is very cheap. It is when you know about the marketing, how much it costs to market your brand on a national stage now. These are not cheap. So that's always been my point for a new winery or someone who tried to get his name out there. This is one of the cheapest way. If you know that you make some good wines, just register your wine, ship some sample out there, and get your brand out there, because I think it's such a cheap way to advertise your brand. There's one thing I want to talk to you about before we get to specific category, because I would like to talk about some winners. When we're talking about wine writing, wine scores, and wine writer, wine influencer, there's always that topic of money and sponsorship who comes up. And about also the Wine Align competition. It's part of a publication. You got some guys who get some money in return. And what we know about the Wine Spectator, it's the same thing with Wine Spectator. Every year we are waiting on the international stage. What's going to be the number one Wine Spectator wine of the year? What's going to be the top 100? Who's going to be in the top 10? Every year, Katina Zapata get a top 10 wine, but we also know that they advertise 3 months out of the year. So there's a very interesting topic. But when we talk about the All Canadian Wine Championship, so you've been involved with them for years now. How clean can you tell me? This is the judge are all volunteer. There's no payment to judge or anything. There's no publication attached to the All Canadian Wine Championship. So to me, it seems like a pretty darn clean contest there.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen anyone walk out with a giant suitcase full of cash, or anyone walk in with a giant duffel bag. I've never seen that. So I don't think that happens. But you're right. It's not like anything is being paid to say, hey, you won Wine of the Year. I mean, it's a nonprofit. It's just not. It's not going to happen. I mean, as for what other wine publications do, without getting into specific ones, all I can say is you can't buy your score, or if you're not happy with your score, you can't pay a fee to have it retasted. And instead of 85 points, you're now at 92 points, and oh my gosh, you're now in the the publication of the the LCBO magazine. It doesn't work like that. I mean, the judges, for example, yes, if there's something that they might taste after, yes, they might be able to, do their own notes and use that for themselves, but that's separate from the competition. That's completely separate.
Mira, did you have anything to Xavier on that front?
Well, I was just curious to know more about the stories. Can you tell us more about some of your favorite stories, having been involved as a volunteer or experiencing the event? Is there anything that jumps out?
Well, the majority of my experience is at the public portion. So, but the thing I like about it is, I mean, because I've been lucky enough to travel to the three main wine regions in Canada, BC, Ontario, and Nova Scotia, being able to tell people, look, this is why this wine is this style, this wine is this style. They're both amazing, but they're so different. You can have a Pinot Noir from BC, the Southern Heat in a Soyuz, and you're trying a Pinot Noir from Prince Edward County, same grape, but done in such different styles, but they're just both so tasty.
I think it's one of the biggest attribute to our country when we're
Mhm.
talking about grape growing and winemaking. It's about diversity. There's not a whole lot of country in the world who has the chance, just exactly you mentioned, to have region as different as Prince Edward County and Osoyoos. You cannot have or Nova Scotia versus the Similkameen Valley. For God's sake, how different these regions are, right? So,
Yeah.
and the reflection in the winemaking and the result is just so different. And so, to be involved in these kind of experience, I think it's the biggest, uh, the biggest. We're so rich in
Hmm.
diversity in our winemaking, and for you to have the experience of experiencing all of these diverse wine. So can you give me, like Mira is asking about experience, to your public portion, the experience, how different, like Nova Scotia versus the Similkameen. So
Oh boy.
what stands out the
Hmm.
most to you?
Overall, and I mean, this does tie in a bit to the competition, is just how good Canadian wines have gotten. I mean, I was one of the, the black sheep of, especially with my wine colleagues, in that, I mean, I didn't come from a family that drank wine. Like, I got interested in wine when I took a trip to Europe, and then just kind of went nuts and ended up becoming a somm as a hobby, which is kind of crazy. But hobby gone wild. I don't recommend it. It's a lot of fun though. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad I did it. But when people kind of put down Canadian wines, they say, "Oh well, it's bad. It's from Canada. How good can it be? All you guys can do is ice wine." But then when you try the consistently across the board, the quality across the country is incredible. Like, yes, some regions have certain strengths over others. That's fine. You're not going to find any wine region in the world that can do everything perfectly. California might be close, although I'm personally not a fan of their sparkling. But realistically, no region is going to be able to say, look, we make, rich reds, light reds, amazing sparkling, amazing dessert wine, light whites, buttery Chardonnays. It just does not exist. I mean, that's a utopia. We don't have that. But the quality across the board, especially like even myself, like I've really only been in a wine maybe 10, 15 years or so. And I can tell the difference. It's like, it is really, really improving across the board. And, just going back to what you were saying before, there are world-class wines made here in Canada, all across the country. It's not like it's just one area where you can say, all right, there's so stuff here, but the great stuff is here. Like, it's just consistently across the board, really, really good.
Absolutely. And also we tend to forget like the hybrid grapes as well, because we grow hybrid like nobody's business. And sometimes we all tend to focus on the vinifera, like the classic Chards or Rieslings or whatever. But there's some outstanding stuff like the Marquettes of the world or the Sigaribi of the world, like all of these outstanding cold climate hybrid grape. And sometimes you just taste these little funky stuff who comes from Nova Scotia or from the Fraser Valley, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like these are gems that you never think about it. And that's the beauty of what you guys do at the All Canadian Wine Championship, because you are not just focusing on some big categories. You guys highlight many different stuff as well also.
Yeah.
And it's really affordable for the small little players. It's not a contest for the big player where the Cellar of the world, the Artera of the world can own every category. It's just, to me, that's why I pay a lot of attention of what you guys do. It's just because it's wide open, and the little guys, that to me is the heart, is the pulse of the Canadian wine industry, have access to this platform. So definitely. And when you asked me a couple of days ago to if there was any category that I wanted to touch base, but to me, guys, I have a few favorite personally, but also the category that I choose that I wanted to highlight as winners were more about what I think, what I believe that Canada is very, very good at. And what I choose as category to talk to you about is Chardonnays,
Yep.
Rieslings, Syrahs, and Meritage. So
Okay.
that was the 4 category that I wanted to touch base with you, because I am a firm believer that yes, Riesling, because we're a cold climate country, Riesling grows so well, especially in Ontario. I think it's one of their strengths. There's outstanding Riesling coming out of that. Of your region, guys, especially when we're talking about 13th Street with Jean-Pierre Collat. Suan staff makes outstanding Rieslings. And, well, I'm not going to start to name some specific people because there's so many. So I'm a firm believer of Riesling. Chardonnay. Chardonnay is my favorite type of grape. And we're seeing more and more the big awards that we're bringing back from the Decanter magazine, from the Chardonnay du Monde. I just tasted Per Morissette again, this Cuvée 19e. We are making, and now you stop me here because I've been fighting with people about, I'm telling people that we're making better wine, better Chardonnays than most of Burgundy. And when people say you're like I'm mentally affected or I'm mentally impaired, I'm saying I'm not talking about the Montrachet or the Meursault, but when you talk in Burgundy in general, about the Macon region, or the Côte de Beaune, or the Chablis, the Chablis Village, like all of these small generic appellations, what we do here in Canada, our Chardonnays are at least as good as what they do in Burgundy.
And they often cost less too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this, and when we're talking about red, I think like the Syrahs from the south of the Okanagan are, and on an upper trend, like it's one of the biggest gem from our country. It's an unknown. People don't know a whole lot about what's happening in Osoyoos, in the Similkameen, the Black Sage Bench. The Syrahs are absolutely off the charts. So how about we talk about the Rieslings to start? So do you have the list of the winners, or who win the Rieslings? Who has the best Riesling?
Yeah. So for Riesling, for example, there were, like you had mentioned before, there were 2 categories. So there was the dry and off dry. So the double gold for the dry went to Melville from Niagara. So he's also the winemaker at Carlo Estates in Prince Edward County. Carlo also picked up a pair of golds as well for their one of their sparklings and their Marquette. So the winemaker, that's the winery. The winemaker, I think that Derek Melville is the name. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he used to be the winemaker at Lely back in the day in Niagara, and he left when they decided to cater to the sweet-toothed bus groups, a different clientele, if you will. But I mean, he still got it. Just as an aside for Melville, he actually does a Canadian oaked Chardonnay. There's a couple of them as well. Like you do see them a little bit here, but I think it's really cool to see, winemakers or wineries starting to use Canadian oak as opposed to just a traditional French and American. So he won that. Then the off-dry Riesling went to Van Weston in BC, in BC on the Naramata bench. For their 2019 Viscous. I mean, there's so many winners for the off-dry category. Like, essentially, try a bunch of them, and like, there's just so many to pick from. I think there was maybe a dozen winners within the categories, but it's pretty even as opposed in the sense of like where they're coming from. Like, there are some categories where it was like predominantly BC, and even a couple of predominantly Ontario, but the Rieslings were pretty well spread out. Van Weston actually also won a pair of bronzes for their Meritage. Two of them. One for the V or 5, and one for the Voluptuous. So both are Merlot dominant, but the V5, I'm not exactly sure how it is. I'm guessing 5. is had Merlot, Cab Franc, Malbec, Cab Sauv, and Petit Verdot.
Okay.
So just to kind of quickly just go for that one, but yeah, I mean, get your hands on the Melville. I'm sure they'll ship out to other provinces. You have to check the website, of course, but yeah, like there's he's a very, very good winemaker. I mean,
Yeah, I was talking. I think his name is Derek, because I was talking with
Derek
Sherry.
Barnett. That's him. Yes.
Yeah, so I was talking with Sherry Carlo the other day, because we're planning our offer with Carlo State Winery for August. And yes, the winemaker is he's really, really sought after. Like, he's one of the top in the country. So, Mira, sorry, Mira, I kind of cut you off here. I know, like, when you pop up on the screen, that's something important happening here. So.
No, it's okay. I just, I want to dig a little more, if I can, into the progression, because I'm super curious, with All Canadian Wine Championships, one of the very first to say, hey, let's highlight Canadian wine. And starting in 81 till now, you've seen some crazy progression in the wines. I know from here in BC, speaking to wine judges that were involved way back in the day, they'd say, oh, back in the 80s, you never know what you would get as submissions.
That's true. That's
you had
true.
to have a spit bucket handy, just because, you just didn't know. Where would you say, like, tell us more about your impressions of that progression? I know you've only been involved how many years now with the
All Canadian Wine Championship? This would be my third year.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I'm sure you're hearing stories, right? So tell us more about those stories, right? And tell us if you've seen kind of a progression in a certain way, a certain varietals that you feel really stand out.
Well, the quality as a whole has really improved, luckily. So, like, what was once, your base benchmark has been elevated, luckily, which is good, so that you don't have to spend $50 to get a decent bottle of wine. I mean, I've heard stories of baby duck. Like, that's well before my time, but I mean, I've heard those kind of stories, and I'm like, man, I'm glad I missed that. But a lot of people say, oh, Canadian wine's bad, but they're thinking of baby duck, that kind of stuff. I mean, a couple of years ago now, maybe 2-3 years ago, some sommelier friends and myself, we went to we were able to do a tasting at a winery in Niagara, and we were able to try wines from like the 80s, like Rieslings from the 80s all the way up to more or less present days, let's say 2015, 16. And yes, you could taste the improvements, like, as you're going on. And it was like, wow, you're having stuff from, like, mid 80s. You're like, wow, I'm glad I missed this. And then, 90s. I mean, it was a really, really interesting experience to try it. But at the same time, it's like, man, like, it's just, it's improved leaps and bounds. And I think that's the case for most of the world as well. But it's just gotten so much better. Like, a $15 bottle of wine now, like a Canadian bottle of wine, you can get something decent,
Hey,
pizza wine on Thursday.
Absolutely. When we talk about Wayne Gretzky, right? Wayne Gretzky, it's not there. These are not the top wine on the Canadian shelf. But guess what? It's better than Wine O'Clock, or it's better than like they are doing some decent stuff for the $15-$17. The wine is drinkable. The wine is approachable. The wine is decent, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, and I've been able to try both the Gretzky's from the Okanagan and Ontario, and I remember the one in Ontario, 3 years ago now. It was passable at best, but since they got the new winemaker, and I don't remember the name, it's gotten a lot better. And the ones in the Okanagan were good too. Like, is it going to blow your socks off? No, but I'd be happy, drinking it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think, and the Mira was a very interesting question with what Mira was saying. Is there any specific grapes, let's say, that you see like a tremendous shift because I would notice myself that Cabernet Franc went from green to filled with terzine and switched to me the quality in the last 5 years, 7 to 5 years. I've seen an outstanding shift in Cabernet Franc of quality.
I would have to agree, Cab Franc. I mean, I think that is Niagara's red grape. Maybe even Canada should be Canada's red grape. But the quality of the Cab Franc over the last couple of years has just, it's found its home here in Niagara. I mean, my experience with Cab Franc in BC is limited, so I can't really speak to that too much. But I mean, hopefully I'll change that in the near future. But yeah, the quality of Cabernet Franc is just, it's incredible. I mean, I'd say, you know, maybe even Gamay as well. There's some really good Gamay coming here out of Niagara, and it's a grape that unfortunately gets overlooked. But you know, when your big brother is Burgundy, I mean, and if you want to say Beaujolais is part of Burgundy or not is a whole other conversation. But you know, you're right next door to Burgundy. Yeah, people aren't really going to pay much attention to you. But there is some excellent Gamay being grown here in Niagara.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. So Chardonnay, I would like to chat quickly about Chardonnay, about the winners here, because while you guys were releasing the result at the All Canadian, that was that big news where Hidden Bench, with one of their 2018 single vineyards, won Best of Show at the Decanter World Wine Award. It's not a small thing. It's a big accomplishment. And that, to me, that highlights the potential of Chardonnay in our country. I tasted a couple months ago, we did the International Chardonnay Day. We opened almost 30 Chardonnays from all over the country, and we can taste the quality from oak Chardonnay, unoaked Chardonnay, sparkling Chardonnays, méthode traditionnelle Chardonnay. What we do with that grape here in Canada, it's absolutely outstanding. So who was the star of the show this year at the All Canadian?
Yeah, so the under $20 Chardonnay, so that actually went to Peller in the Okanagan for that category. Mary Nissen took the gold here, based here in Ontario.
Oh, did you said Mary Nissen's?
Mary Nissen took the gold as well.
Good. That's a good news, because they're sending me a sample pack here for me to try, because we're planning a feature with the club a little later on in a couple months. So that's a good news right there.
Yeah, that might be one to hoard, the Mary Nissen's Chardonnay there. Trias, who is also owned by Peller, also won a gold. Sorry, my apologies. They took the silver, and the bronze went to Monte Creek up in, I believe, the Thompson Valley.
Thompson River Valley. Yeah, it's right out of Kamloops.
Okay.
Yeah, right out of Kamloops. It's a small emerging region, to be honest. There's two Harper Trails and Monte Creek are two of the stars of the Thompson Valley. And I would say it's probably 2.5 hours out of the Okanagan. So, and it's a quite of an emerging country. It's really warm and dry out there. So yeah, no, it's worth to keep an eye on that region if you're always interested in a little gem. This is a good name.
They're a good one, yeah. So, and then for the $20 to $30 range, Monte Creek won a double gold. There were 3 winners for the that as well. There was Delgado for the Dragonfly, Legends Estate Chardonnay for the Reserve, and Les Mâts des Patois from Quebec in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, south of Montreal. So that was an interesting surprise there.
For a Chardonnay.
For Chardonnay.
Are you kidding me? That's interesting. No. That is pretty cool.
No, there's the silvers went to Lunescence in Summerland.
Yeah.
On the Bottleneck Drive. Love that part. Little place you can just drive a little bit, and you're at a winery essentially 30 seconds.
And Hey,
So, yeah.
Xavier, just so where we moved, we're like 30 minutes from Summerland.
Oh, okay.
It's right there. We brought a few of our people to Lunescence lately. They have one of the most beautiful view on the lake.
They do.
It's absolutely fantastic. We also featured that micro lot Chardonnay in one of Carl's Wine Club feature a couple months ago. It's a pretty nice all estate fruit Chardonnay. I really like what they're doing out there.
Yeah, I know they are a good winery. They are very good. I've been there once myself, and yeah, I hope to get back in in the near future. So yeah, they went for their small lot from Prince Edward County using Niagara fruit. Redtail won with their 20. They won as well. It's a really cool winery. I actually did manage to do a tasting there because it was recommended to me from some friends. And although they're using Niagara fruit for the moment, they're waiting for the vines to kind of kick in. But my understanding is that it's something similar is done in parts of the Cowichan Valley. Well, they'll bring in the fruit from the Okanagan for various reasons. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's still good wine.
Cowichan Valley does that a lot, in the Fraser Valley as well. Just
okay.
off the mainland, around what's the main city there, Mira? Off the Fraser, Abbotsford, right?
Okay. Yeah, I've driven through it. Never been there though.
They do, because in Abbotsford they can't really grow the Merlots and the Big Reds or the Chards. They really specialize more into Pinot Gris and Sigaribi and a little bit of the hybrid grape. But they bring the other varietal from the Okanagan. There's a few good examples.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, Single Tree does that.
Also, Seaside Pearl does that. Domaine Chaberton as well in Abbotsford does that. So
okay. Yeah, I've driven through Abbotsford, just haven't stopped in for the wines. It's usually been on the way to the Okanagan or on the way back, and nothing's still open by that point. But I'll definitely have to make it a point to stop by.
There's a beautiful spot out there. Very gorgeous area. Mount Lehman is a very special place, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And the way it works at Mount Lehman, you have like 400 or 500 feet above sea level, and you got the breeze from the ocean because you're 45 minutes from Vancouver, right? So the breeze from the ocean dry off the grapes, so you don't have any problem with molds or any disease, because the breeze always blow and keep your vineyard dry up there. So it's it's a pretty nice region, upcoming region, but not warm enough to grow the big red. So
sorry, just trying to see here. Rockway also won with their small lot in Niagara for the silver, and the bronze went to Fort Barons, Moraine Estate, and also from Quebec, Vignoble de Rivière de Chêne from the Val d'Oca with their La Cantina.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So
that's awesome. So that is for Chardonnay. Mira, do you have any little thing here for Chardonnay?
Oh, we still got the over 30s too.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
So for over 30s, the double gold went to Mission Hills Terroir Collection. The gold went to Ravine and Roost Wine. So Roost Wine is an emerging wine region in Blue Mountain, or a hill if you're from BC. It's not an actual mountain, but Blue Mountain, close to Georgian Bay. If you're going to Tobermory, probably an easy side trip. The silver went to Kinty, I believe is the pronunciation, in Prince Edward County for their vacay using Niagara fruit, but the wineries in Prince Edward County from the St. David's Bench appellation. And Pondview also won as well, the silver. And then the 3 bronzes went to Des Simon, Huff Estates in Prince Edward County, and Noble Ridge from OK Falls, which I think arguably has one of the best wine views in the country, if not the best.
Yeah, their traditional method. The one is it's pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's it for the Chardonnays. I think you said you wanted to go over the Syrah, I believe.
Yeah, I would like to go, but now we're just bumping our time, so I don't want to take too much of your
No,
time.
we can. We can keep going.
It's 10 o'clock, so I don't want to keep you up too late. It's only 7 here, so I have all night.
It's not past my bedtime yet. I'm fine to keep going if you guys want.
Here's the thing about Syrahs is Carl's been saying for quite a while that Syrah is one of the grapes that we can really stand out with on the international stage. And the more we're tasting Syrahs, especially in the Okanagan, the more I agree with that statement. It's just we're making some fantastic Syrahs. So I'm curious too if you'll indulge us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And by the way, like if anyone wants to look it up after, like the results are on the website as well. So
that's, I think Mira will just probably put it up on the chat box here so everyone can look it up. I also seen, I think it was the under $20 Casaba won double gold under the unoaked Chardonnay. I was looking at maybe anyway. So it's interesting because when I tasted Casaba a couple months back, I was pretty impressed with that unoaked Chardonnay, and I made a point to we featured them, and yes, it was for the price, pretty darn good and hard to beat the quality of price.
Oh, I agree. So for the Shiraz under 30, because there was under 30 and over 30, Shaberton won the double gold there.
So see here, Xavier, Shaberton, I think that's that one. They're from the Fraser Valley.
Fraser Valley, okay.
And they purchased their fruit down in the Okanagan, Soyuz. And so that's the prime example that we're just mentioning. It's all about grape sourcing, right?
Yeah.
If you can source the top grape in the region, you don't have to grow it to make great wine. No. You have a good winemaker and a great fruit source. There you go. You can get a double gold, for God's sake.
You're golden. You're good to go. Double golden.
So double gold for Dummin Shepperton, eh?
Yeah.
Wow.
The gold went to Jackson Triggs in the Okanagan, and a gold also went to Moon Cursor, which that is a wine you should have. In general, people, everyone should have at least a couple of wines from them in their cellar. Like it's consistently, Moon Cursor does so good in the competition. And I mean, they also got a nice view overlooking the lake in Soyuz as well. But they're a great winery.
They just reopened today. They were closed because the fire in Soyuz were right in their backyard. Like they were literally like right on their property, right on the cusp of their property. They just reopened today. So
okay, good. I mean, hopefully the grapes, didn't get affected.
The Verizon haven't started yet, there's no vineyard who have been burnt, as we know. Maybe a little bit of Anarchist Mountain, but in the grand scheme of thing, there's barely no vineyards who have been affected by the fire. So
that's good, and that's something. It's something nice to hear from about these fires. Usually, it's just negative, but. Yeah.
It affected the region a lot because no one goes there right now. It's been 10 days. There's nobody. Mira and I, we went to Court Farm. It's a fun winery, really kid friendly. They do like animal tours for the kids and apple juice tasting and all of that while mom and pops are tasting the wines. Finally, there's someone who are thinking of us and take the kids away for half an hour. So, and it's in Osoyoos, and we went for a drive on the Black Sage Road. No, we haven't seen one car on the Black Sage Road, and it's crazy. There's nobody in Osoyoos right now, so it's devastating for the tasting room because no one goes to visit, and it's the prime time right now. So it's not the ideal situation, but at least no vineyard has been affected by the fire. So.
Yeah, no, that is, and hopefully no loss of life as well. It's just going over for the under 30s as well. Sunrock, which is owned by, I believe, Arterra, won a silver. See You Later, which also has a nice view, won a bronze for the under 30 for the Syrah.
Okay.
And then for the over 30, the double gold, I mean, probably not a surprise to people who are, familiar with BC Shiraz, Vanessa Vineyard. I mean,
It's our moon.
yeah.
So he is the best winemaker of Syrah. He used to be at Sand Hill, and he owns Vanessa now. So he just won winemaker of the year from the BC Wine Grower. So
Yeah, and I believe he also has an Order of Canada too. So essentially, he's done it all.
yeah,
He's pretty much done it
absolutely.
all.
Probably one of the most sought after winemaker in the country.
And the thing is, like, the price of that wine is $37. So, I mean, if you're in BC and you can get your hands on it, you might want to hurry.
Yeah.
The golds went to La Friends in
On the bench.
West Kelowna, I believe.
I think it's on the Ramada bench, La Friends.
Oh, near. Okay, I'm thinking.
No, that's interesting, Carl. We have to check this out. I think they have a tasting room in West Kelowna, and we are in West Kelowna because I know the neighbors go there all the time for lunch. So, so we're gonna have to go try their Syrah on recommendation of the All Canadian Wine Championships.
Okay. Then another gold also went to Mission Hill. Silver went to Church and State and Laughingstock, respectively. And the bronze, Moon Cursor again for their Contraband, and See You Later also won with their Legacy. So those rounds up the Syrah / Shiraz. I mean, yeah, BC kind of cleaned up there. It's just the climate is different there.
Exactly. Like there's a few little spot on the escarpment, I would say, maybe on the 20-mile bench, where there's a few good Syrah vineyard in Ontario, in Niagara. But out of that, I think some of the best. I tasted Casaba. Casaba has a single vineyard Syrah where I think they did a good job to extract as much as they could. But yeah, it makes sense. I didn't expect to see any Ontario producer here in the top prizes for Syrah. It makes more sense where the terroir allow in the heat of Osoyoos and Oliver, mostly, and a little bit of the Similkameen. It's the heart of Syrah. So
yeah, no, you're right there. Like it's, I mean, yeah, there's a couple of pockets, but the reality is, I mean, short of global warming, completely changing, but I mean, if it changes that much, we're going to have other problems. It's just not hot enough here. I mean, and that's just the reality. I think you said you also wanted to go to the Meritage.
Yeah, if you have an extra 5 minutes, I can tell you do that. Or Mira, do you have anything?
And then I want to know, I can put this bug in your ear, Xavier, but I want to know where you think the future of the All Canadian Wine Championships is going. If there's anything exciting on the horizon or anything that you want to share that you feel is a big trend in the industry, something sort of forward looking. I would love to end on a note like that.
Okay.
But I'll let you do the Meritage first.
All right, let's do the Meritage. And then we can just touch on like the top 5 trophy winners as well.
Sure.
So the Meritage, actually, speaking of trophy winner, the best red went to Dark Horse from the Okanagan for their Meritage. So it's made up of 65% Merlot, 30% Cab Sauv, and 5% Cab Franc, aged in French and American oak from the Golden Mile sub-appellation. It's textbook Okanagan heat. I mean,
yeah, and it's the great oak. I think it's Arterra.
Yes,
who owns Dark Horse. It's very small production. It's one label, very pinpoint focus. They have vineyard on the Golden Miles, and it's very. You just mentioned it. It's textbook Golden Mile. It's juicy. Yep. It's big. It's ripe fruit. So these wines to me, they are the modern Canadian wines. To me, to be honest, blind taste, it can compete with California wines.
I think so. I would I'd have to agree with that. Luckily, it will not be competing with the price.
No, exactly. Yeah, you're 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. So these one were. This is the double gold. This is the best of show for red, right?
So the Dark Horse won the best red. It just happens to be a Meritage as well. The other ones, just kind of quickly go over them. Cassini Cellars won with their 2017 Maximus. Oh, sorry, I just clarify with the Dark Horse. It's the 2016 because it seems like the 2017 is available, but it is the 16 that won. So just in case anyone.
And 16 was a hot vintage too.
Yeah.
So like a really, really good vintage for big red grape varietal.
So Cassini won for their 2017 Maximus. Grey Monk won with their Meritage as well, Odyssey. Lakeside Cellars, which I believe you have as your winery, won with their Provenir.
That's funny you're mentioning that right there. That's our feature this week. And the 17 Provenir hasn't been, haven't left the winery yet. It's still there. The 16 still pours, so it's the first. It's the national premiere that we're having. The 17 Provenir, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I haven't tasted it yet. I'm going to be tasting it tomorrow live during our Wednesday wine happy hour. It's
all right,
cool.
Excellent. The other gold went to Incameep in Osoyoos. Excellent winery, amazing stuff across the board. And Orofino won as well. Basically, the Meritage BC pretty much cleaned up, except for
just for you, if you look at all of the BC winery that you just mentioned for Meritage, they are all but the Grey Monk. They are all located in Osoyoos and Oliver. So just to give you a geographical situation, it's all from the deep south of the Okanagan. That's where the Merlots and the Cabs have been grown. And for the Odyssey from Grey Monk, they're all the way up in Lake Country, north, almost in Vernon, but they have vineyard down south. So the grapes are coming from their vineyard down south. Yeah.
So the silver went to Blasted Church with their Nothing Sacred, Laughing Stop with their Portfolio, Magnata from Ontario, one with their Grand Reserva, Noble Ridge with their King's Ransom Meritage, excellent wine, pricey but excellent.
Yeah.
And Sunrock with their Meritage as well. And then just to round up the bronze, Church and State with their estates, Colchester Ridge in Lake Erie North Shore, one with their Grand Cru, CREW, but the winery Colchester Ridge Estate, CREW as well. So it just works out for them that way. Van Weston also picked up. Oh yeah, we spoke about Van Weston before. And then Nostalgia Wines in BC with their family collection with the Meritage.
That's interesting. Thank you so much. Also the big winner, so the big trophy for
so the big wins here. So we mentioned the Dark Horse won for the best red. Grey Monk Estate, owned by Peller, won the Sparkling with their 2018 Odyssey Rose Brut from the Okanagan, of course. That one's a blend of Pinot, Gamay, and Pinot Meunier, made in traditional method.
Lake Country.
Yeah. Oddly enough, Two Sisters won last year with their, I believe it was Blanc de Franc. It was last year or the year before. And then this year they won a gold. So it seems like it was kind of, neck and neck. And then Blasted Church won with their OMG as the gold as well. And then going back to smaller family-run wineries. So the best white went to Wild Goose in Okanagan Falls. Again, this is one of those wines that if it's not in your collection, get it. Maybe not necessarily this wine, but the wines from these guys are between $20 to $30 for the most part. There might be the odd outlier, but they're such excellent value wines.
Absolutely. I so agree with you. In that little region of OK Falls, they're great. The Wild Goose, they're located right beside Stag's Hollow, and it's just spectacular there.
Yeah, it's great. And they're same family run winery, salt of the earth type, people. They're excellent. And just as an aside from them, in 2018, they won the best red and white. So they won the best red with their Meritage and with their Gewürztraminer.
Wow.
So if you're in a Gewürztraminer, run, don't walk. Run to Wild Goose. They also make a great Riesling and their Gamay, which also won a bronze.
And also Wild Goose, I think they just got purchased by Burrowing Owl.
Oh, I remember hearing about that.
Just happened a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So you might want to rush, basically.
Yeah, before they change their winemaking program.
Yeah. No, that's sometimes that happens for the better, for the worse.
Too often.
Yeah. So then the dessert wine category went to Cellar here in Ontario with their 2019 Riesling ice wine. They also won a double gold with their Cab Franc and a bronze with their Sauvignon Blanc. And just to quickly mention, so the based in the Similkameen, Forbidden Fruit, won the fruit wine category with their Flaunt Organic Sparkling Wine. Seems that you also do fruit regular wines as well. Unfortunately, I have not been to the winery, but it seems they do a little bit of everything. And then for cider fans, West Avenue Cider won Best Cider with their Northern Lights. Unfortunately, I am not a cider person, so that's about all I can say about that.
That's an outstanding overview. Thank you so much. And I think here I have a very interesting question for you. So, what's new and exciting? Let's say for 2022 and onward, where the All Canadian Wine Championship are going? What's the forecast? What's the vision?
Well, hopefully not under a tent and back to normal. I mean, the tent worked. Don't get me wrong; it was nice, breezy, but it'd be nice to have it back to normal. I mean, in terms of the quality of wine, I mean, hopefully, at this point, I think most people and wineries would agree it would be nice just to have things back to normal. Where you can just kind of walk in for a tasting, but if you want to do an appointment, you can do that as well. Just kind of back to normal. I think the quality is going to keep getting better and better. Unfortunately, in this country, we have this habit where we can't support our own until we have other people or other countries saying, hey, you guys are doing a good thing. And this applies to music, movies, you name it. Unfortunately, we have this habit of, not supporting our own here in this country. But
a complex of inferiority or a complex of not knowing what we're doing good.
Yeah. So but I do think that's going to change. I mean, even though like in terms of like wine education, Canadian wines are an afterthought at best. It is part of the curriculum in the sense of, like at least when I was doing my CMS, the MS who was teaching us said, look, it may not be part of the test, but you need to know what's in your own backyard, at least the basics, and kind of like you try, for example, some Rieslings next to German Riesling. You're like, hey, this is pretty good. It may not be exactly on the same level, but it's still a good wine, and go from there. So, I think the younger generation, even though I'm barely in that anymore, won't have the baggage, if you will, from the old country of, this, I can only drink this because this is what my parents drank, right? Or I can't drink this because of, whatever reason. Go in with an open mind. And I say that for all wines. At the end of the day, it's just a bottle of wine. You have absolutely nothing to lose by trying it, especially at a tasting room. So that's where I would think it's going. I think with these awards from international awards from Decanter, Jancis Robinson writing about Canadian wines as well. There's nowhere to go but up.
I totally agree. Mira Boucher, what do you have for us in the final?
Well, I share that vision of essentially once we catch on as a nation, what we are sitting on, the amazing wines that are here. My vision is that every Canadian winery will be sold out. The only way you're going to be able to get your hands on Canadian wines is by visiting here if you're international, and being so lucky to be able to smuggle back a few bottles out of the country. And we living here get the benefit of being able to access these wines, and hopefully more and more, with free trade between the provinces, because that's one of the barriers I think that's hindering the industry.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. It's the various provincial governments, some more than others, are essentially shooting themselves in the foot, because if somebody really wants a wine from Ontario, someone in Ontario wants a wine from Nova Scotia, BC, or elsewhere, you can get it. It's not that difficult. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that. Go ahead.
Our part of what our role is, and this is why I'm so grateful you joined us today, Xavier, is to spread the word and also just start to build this community of wine lovers who get it, and basically become the raving fans that support these wineries that are doing world-class stuff, and get the word out. And let's do it in a crazy fun kind of way. Some members were talking the other day about a truck with Carl's Wine Club on it, going around and this and that. We're talking more and more. I mean, this Thursday, if you guys are listening and you're in the Okanagan on Thursday, we're having members over for a barbecue, and we're opening a whole bunch of wines together and tasting. And I think that's how you change things and change perceptions.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. You got to, keep an open mind, for sure. And that it goes beyond wine. But the one last thing I wanted to say was just quickly touch on the Uncorked event. So yes, it traditionally is here in Ontario, in Prince Edward County as well. So the tentative date is around September 25th, so late September. Still waiting on, what happens with COVID. And again, the proceeds go to the Prince Edward County Rotary Club to help with the local hospital. So, we'll see if that happens. Hopefully so. If so, I will be there with much shorter hair. But, all running around, answering questions about, various wines from across the country. But stay tuned for that, especially if you're, here in Ontario, or, if you're from out west and you want to check it out and see, visit the county in Niagara.
Yeah, it's on our list to do a little wine tour here, a Carl's Wine Club event in a different region of either Niagara and Prince Edward County. I think this year will be a little hard to make that happen, but next year, absolutely, Carl's Wine Club will be on site. We'll be touring the at least Niagara, maybe hopefully Prince Edward County as well. But yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, hopefully things work out. We're wait and see, I suppose. But
so Mira, thank you so much. It was a great hour and 25 minutes.
Oh yeah, sorry we went over. Sorry.
Oh no.
Sorry.
I haven't been on time since we started. I always go over. So, but I really appreciate your time, Xavier. I appreciate your knowledge. I appreciate all the information. Thanks for your generous time. It was great to catch up with you. Mira, what do you have for final?
I just want to say thank you. And, when's your next trip to the Okanagan? Do you know yet, Xavier?
I'm working on a tentative move out west, a job transfer, if you will. So it's just COVID has thrown a monkey wrench in these plans. It's still supposed to be happening. When, I don't know, hopefully sooner than later, because right now I'm literally in limbo. I'm like, well, I can't really buy too many wines because then I have to ship them all across the country.
Right.
So it's And when I see the prices of, housing in Vancouver go up and up and up, and I'm like, okay, I got to do this like sooner than later.
Yeah. Well, that's why, the Okanagan, there's some really way better priced stuff out here. So,
there is, but the office is in Vancouver, so I have to sort of close, but
yeah, well, you'll be close enough that you can pop out for a weekend with no problem, right? And
that's true. That's true.
We'll be excited to see you when you come by. That will be lots of fun.
For sure.
Xavier, a big thank you again. We'll catch up soon. Thanks again for all of the information. Mira Boucher, thank you so much for your expertise. Carl's Wine Club members, Canadian wine lovers, to all of you across the country, to everyone back east, good night. Have a great rest of your evening. To everyone in the Pacific time zone, enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll chat with you tomorrow with the Carl's Wine Club for Wednesday Wine Happy Hour. I'm cracking a national premiere. I'm going to crack Prevenier 2017 from Lakeside Cellar, who just won gold at the All Canadian Wine Championship. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.